Hello, world. Welcome back to another Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageJew. And with me, as always, tonight is Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. My man, what is going on? You look like you got something special on the side there.
Bro, your boy, first of all, tonight's the premiere of Hard Knocks, man. So I figured the entire nation's going to sit back and kind of ridicule my favorite professional football team. Your boy went 2 buttons.
Oh.
Your boy left the closet open.
Nice.
On top of all that, your boy stocked the fridge.
Wow. Drinking a White Claw. Well, you know what they say, don't drink alone, bro. Don't drink
Cheers,
alone.
buddy.
I'm not going to Baker Mayfield this White Claw because that'd be embarrassing as hell, but I'm going to drink it.
Yeah, buddy. Here we are. Tuesday night, just talking ball with my buddy Nate. What is going on, dude? Besides these delicious White Claws, what is going on?
Nothing. First off, White Claw does not sponsor us, but I believe that sometime in 2019 they will, and that's the plan. Show the cans, both of us.
Right.
Delicious raspberry flavor, very good.
Wow. Okay, your boy got a ruby grapefruit this evening.
Nice. Those are delicious as well. I had to borrow this from my wife. We really got to talk a little bit about the site real quick. We've been getting a bunch of traffic since we launched, end of July. It's awesome. It's good to see people are going to your rankings. Clearly, they like them. They're getting hit all the time. I'm seeing people looking at the running backs, the receivers. It's good to know. Ryan's putting good content out. In addition to his rankings, he's been doing articles, tiers of those positions. Currently, he's released quarterback. He just did running back, and set to release next week, a few days after this episode drops. He's going to be releasing his wide receiver tiers, which you can look for on the website, or if you follow us on Twitter or Instagram, we will have a graphic that has Ryan's first tier in it, along with a link that you can follow back to the website. Lots of ways to find yourself back at breakoutfinder.com, the place that we would like you to reside. We'll have all your needs and things that you want. That's what we carry here.
Yes.
In addition to Ryan's article about wide receivers, the last one in the series is going to be tight ends. That may be coming the week after or something after that. Definitely before the season goes off officially. And one more article I want to pump before it comes out. Taylor Smith, another writer over at Breakout Finder, and I think he writes at playerprofiler.com. Also, he's writing a dope article that I've read about the dynamic score and why is it important. This thing is a super deep article. It's a good read. Give him a follow at J, the letter, TAY Smith 16 on Twitter. He's been writing some pretty wild stuff on the website, as well as Ryan, and we're just trying to crank out content. Speaking of cranking out content, man, this is a tough one for me. The Houston Texans cranked D'Onta Foreman right out of the building.
That's it.
But couldn't have necessarily landed in a better spot. Now, I realize there's an incumbent here that changes things, but this is a high-powered offense that D'Onta Foreman is going to with the Indianapolis Colts. Does it matter? I mean, what's going to happen? Is he going to push Marlon Mack? Is he just an extra piece? Let me sip my White Claw and listen.
Well, I don't want to give away too much, but this was a top. So we have next Tuesday. We have a really stellar guest lined up. The Tuesday after that, got another really, really big fish. This topic was to be discussed this week. We unfortunately pushed off that fish till next week. So Nate and I are gonna sit here and tell you about the Houston fallout, the Indianapolis backfield, and stuff like that. So to answer my pal's Nate's question here, dude, Foreman. Obviously, you are, as you kind of hinted at, man. You are in mourning over here. It's tough times at the Liss household. Mm-hmm. Again, the report came out. We're told that Foreman was cut due to conditioning concerns. I immediately thought of this was a player that got pumped up earlier this offseason, a player that many of us, myself included, thought was kind of in line, despite the Achilles injury, to push Lamar Miller for that RB1 spot in that loaded Deshaun Watson quarterback Houston offense. Obviously that's not how things shook out. One can say they shook out the complete opposite of that. Dude finds himself on a completely different roster right now. So I think, given the uncertainty of the conditioning, the reason that he was cut free from the Texans, I think that's kind of just that's kind of fine print, hidden text for just they were concerned maybe about the way he was recovering from this Achilles injury. Again, a lot of mixed signals out of that camp. I'm not dialed in. I'm not a doctor, so we can only read between those lines as much as we so choose. But in Indianapolis, Mac, seems to be, pretty clearly in that RB1, driver's seat. Below him, we know they spent decent draft capital on, pass catching superstar, satellite back plus Nyheim Hines last year. Still factors to, still should factor into that offense. So, super high level, immediate reaction for me. Foreman went from kind of, RB2 to RB1, kind of on that cusp, pushing for that job, to now maybe finds himself as more of like as a true RB3 on the mend, with, these quote unquote, work ethic, conditioning concerns. So to Nate's point, goes from one good offense to another good offense. But had his own kind of asterisks and question marks in that Houston offense, and now comes to a new offense with those same question marks, perhaps even more question marks. So a player that Nate again was high on for very good reason coming out, a player that I was high on this season for season long purposes. But now I'm just man, I am torn in a bunch of different directions.
Boy, this is a tough one for me, man. 3 names come to mind when I think about D'Onta Foreman's new role with the Indianapolis Colts. I was a big fan of Foreman. Hard to come back from an Achilles tendon injury. We don't see it very often. Not a big history of it for us to really say that players do or don't, but it's hard to believe a guy would have an injury like this and not have some diminishing results from it. But, again, we're not doctors, and we'd like to believe that there's something more to this, why he left Houston. He's not pushing Marlon Mack without Marlon Mack playing poorly, which none of us expect him to do. Or if Marlon Mack gets hurt, maybe we see a little bit of D'Onta Foreman, because he can do things that Nyheim Hines can't do, that we expect Jordan Wilkins not to do. But I kind of look at D'Onta Foreman like Carlos Hyde, Doug Martin, C.J. Anderson. They kind of feel like the same player to me now, right? There's an incumbent, a better runner in front of them. Foreman's younger than the players I named, but we still haven't seen, feature production out of him in the NFL. You'd have to go back to 2017 to really see anything at all because of the injury last year. We saw him break out in a couple games. He had 6.5 yards per carry versus Arizona, 10 carries for 65. Against New England, 2 catches for 65. So we saw a little bit of that pass catching prowess in that game. So I've always thought the intangibles were there with him. Great landing spot for him to go to, not necessarily for him to take the lead back job, but with an injury to Mack or something of that nature, we could see D'Onta Foreman, get some run. But again, I don't think anybody's predicting injury, and I don't think anybody believes that D'Onta Foreman is going to push Marlon Mack for that starting job whatsoever.
Right. What obviously Foreman leaves that Houston team. And again, a lot of the offseason headlines were either pumping up Foreman's ability, maybe as a result of that kind of, there were some natural questions surrounding, Lamar Miller's ability to kind of hold on to that RB1, the RB1 spot in this really potent Houston offense. Now, does, Foreman exiting, does that leave the proverbial door open for you, Nate, as far as, is there a back or 2 or 3 that you can see, Houston kind of chasing after now, to give either going back and forth a couple of days ago when the news broke. We were both obviously swing for the fences. Someone get Mel Gordon's agent on the phone. I believe today I saw some report that basically both sides, Houston and Gordon's agents, that they weren't that wasn't in the cards. So Melvin Gordon aside, is there a name or two? There was a name that you and I, besides Gordon, both kind of hit on. So is there a name or two that you want to kind of plug here that you would be kind of all in on if this transaction were to kind of shake out?
First off, to go back to a point that you made, let me sip the claw first.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the podcast because we do a video also, but you don't know I'm drinking one if you don't hear it. When have we not doubted Lamar Miller? It feels like every year he's been in the league, People have been like, nah, I don't want Lamar Miller. Now, he's always a value because nobody wants Lamar Miller.
Yeah, just keeps falling in drafts.
But this time around, there is literally no competition, right? We were saying that D'Onta Foreman, even coming off of the Achilles tendon injury, was going to push Lamar Miller for his job. For Christ's sakes, nobody gives Lamar Miller a chance. I liked him a long time ago. I had some spats with Matt Kelly over Lamar Miller. I love Lamar Miller right now. He's in Houston. It's a good offense. The job is all his. I don't see any reason not to be a fan. Clearly, D'Onta Foreman leaving was a boost to Lamar Miller's value, the same way that Theo Riddick leaving Detroit was a boost to Kerryon Johnson's value. It was instantaneous in a sense of like confidence and ownership and us knowing that there wasn't going to be a talented or capable runner behind them that could steal some portion of that workload. Lamar Miller's 28 years old. He's been in the league, a few years now. But even going back to last year, looking at him, number 10 in yards created at the position, 384 yards last year. So Lamar Miller's still getting things done. He's not washed by any means. Number 11 in rush yards with 973. We want to see the targets go up, right? It was targeted 35 times last year. So that's the hope. Again, 14 games, so that number would have gone up in a regular season. But this could be it for Lamar Miller. This could be truly one of the renaissance years for him. And I'm all in on Lamar Miller this year. Obviously, his price tag just went up a little bit because people gained that buyer's confidence. But you're still going to have those people out there that are non-believers, and I think that's going to make his ADP not rise too much.
Yeah, I like that. What else we got scrolling down here, bro? So hey,
1 sec. Before we move on, back to your other question about who could we see perhaps joining this backfield if they were to go get somebody, because everybody was saying that Houston should trade for Melvin Gordon. Again, like not believing in Lamar Miller whatsoever. And we've got it written down here, 2 names that I could totally see them going to get. But again, I think that they're cool with Lamar Miller in the position that he's in because he has been successful. I think a stat came out that he's the only player, or in the last 5 years, he's had over 1,100 all-purpose yards, and he's the only player over the last 5 years to do that. But yeah, Duke Johnson, Gio Bernard, 2 names of players that are, kind of a pass catcher. I think Duke Johnson's a much better runner between the tackles than Gio Bernard is historically. But those are 2 players that I could see going there if they were willing to spend it. As far as Melvin Gordon, I think the team that still sticks out the most, probably to all of us, is Tampa Bay. That should be a fire offense this year. Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones. I don't believe in Ronald Jones. Now, people don't believe in Lamar Miller, but I do not believe in Ronald Jones. I'm going to sip a White Claw to that. Go ahead.
You bring up Ronald Jones, and we're not going to talk about Jones too much this show. Last year it's a hard sell for anyone to come back and buy Ronald Jones. I was kind of reawoken to the Ronald Jones world once Matt Kelly himself was kind of talking him up a little bit at his ADP. Matt Kelly was obviously a staunch, he was on one side of the Ronald Jones debate. So when he was, when he was preaching, us, not having take lock and all that, and he was kind of coming back around on Ronald Jones, bouncing back this year. I kind of opened my eyes back up. Now, what I was saying before, you and I were talking, off air a little bit. I get the sweats when I see the Arizona offense, any blurb about this Arizona team, and any transaction that comes up as it relates to pass catchers. The Cardinals just went out and signed Mike Crabtree. So I see a transaction that happens in Arizona as it relates to adding pass catchers, and I hear Matt Kelly's voice in the back of my head. I see your face, you two, just with these grins on your faces about Hakeem Butler. Hakeem Butler comes up once a show. He's going to come back up right now, man, because again, Mike Crabtree is in Arizona. The writing may or may not be on the wall for Hakeem Butler, not a player we've heard a ton of this camp. He had a couple highlight catches, of course, that the Cardinals social media team tweeted out. But again, Butler was a polarizing player, during this draft process. So far, the headlines in Arizona, we know Christian Kirk. We are all in. The breakout boys are all in on Christian Kirk. Larry Fitzgerald is still there. Seen a ton of buzz about Keyshawn Johnson, someone that we talked about a little bit last week. And now the Cardinals go out and sign 31 or 32-year-old Mike Crabtree as well, which would, again, kind of insinuate that, Andy Isabella maybe hasn't necessarily made that impact that we thought he was going to have, sooner rather than later. And obviously Hakeem Butler's kind of fallen down the pecking order as well. So you see the Mike Crabtree headline, bro. What is your first reaction besides running to your phone and tweet and texting me about Hakeem Butler's now and his future?
Incredible. Michael Crabtree. The Arizona Cardinals do everything in their power to add the most dynamic playmakers they can in the NFL draft. Then they continue to give Larry Fitzgerald a job and bring in one of the least juiced players that's still in the NFL in Michael Crabtree. If they start Michael Crabtree and Larry Fitzgerald, this offense is going to be fucking throttled. And what's going to throttle it even more is the fact that right now, you know who the starting slot wide receiver is? You know who they have in there right now?
Is Christian? No. It's Kevin White penciled in.
Kevin fucking White at the slot position. What is going on here? They're making everybody earn it. I at this point, I don't know if Chad Williams isn't going to be a starter. We don't know anything about Arizona. Here's my take though on Michael Crabtree. Look, Michael Crabtree has seen over 100 targets every year for the last 5 years. And that's even with some game starts missed and stuff like that. He hasn't had over 60 catches in 2 years. He played in Oakland 1 year, played in Baltimore last year. He is currently, 32 years old? Almost 32 years old. There's nothing left in this tank necessarily for Michael Crabtree. And even if there is, the expectation is that this ball is going to be spread everywhere. David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, the untouchable piece, the one guy that we all believe is going to be the 1A in this offense. He's the only guy that we haven't heard a negative about yet. The shitting on Hakeem Butler. How are those double moves working out for Andy Isabella? Not good, apparently. Apparently his double moves he's not selling them. He needs to take some sales classes. And then you got Michael Crabtree showing up, and then Seals Jones there. I mean, there's names on this roster. And if the expectation for you is that Kyler Murray's going to throw the ball a league-high top 10, then a guy like Michael Crabtree might be a decent flex play occasionally, but I don't see that with Kyler Murray. Even though they expect the pace to be higher, I could see some more of that high-paced offense going into the sort of that David Johnson role, a pass catcher like that, or even going back to the tight end in that sense. Yeah. I'm not sold on Michael Crabtree, but in terms of this Arizona offense as a whole, I'm still in on Andy Isabella. I believe in him. The breakout finder likes him. Hakeem Butler, we knew he was a project. He's been treated as one all offseason. He continues to be one. Keyshawn Johnson, I think, will eventually get passed by Hakeem Butler. I believe that. The hype is up on him right now. Kevin White, I'm not buying into at all. You can get him for free. You can load him on your roster if you want. There's no way he's holding that down. Larry Fitzgerald will do what he normally does. And Christian Kirk is the only guy that's a wide receiver that I'm even touching in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, that's you said it best. So that's the one player that where most fantasy gamers, man, are all in on this Arizona offense for obvious reasons. The play pace is going to be way up. Christian Kirk, to your point, is that one player that he's the common denominator, the one player that everyone almost universally just circles back around on. So circling back around on, again, we talked at the top of the show, man. Hard Knocks tonight. Out in Oakland, bro, I hopped on the timeline earlier this afternoon, and there was some report. I quickly scrolled through. Somewhere, somehow, I don't know who reported, but there was a gnarly picture later last week of Antonio Brown's feet, bro. I don't know if you saw this picture of Antonio Brown's feet, bro, but his shits were peeling. It was a gnarly scene. The report that I read today was that maybe he's been missing parts of training camp and limping around because he caught frostbite after staying in one of those fucking cryo chambers for too long. I think the Pro Football Doc might have had a post or something and immediately kind of refuted that. But I say all that about Antonio Brown and his nasty ass feet to say that if we're talking about constants, the Raiders obviously, just like every other team this time of year, have released their initial depth chart, and there was a name penciled in. Nothing's in pen yet. There was a name penciled in to the Raiders starting slot receiver. If you go to playerprofile.com right now and you type Hunter Renfrow, you're gonna see a picture of what might look like your cousin, your adolescent cousin. But your adolescent cousin, bro, has some hands, and he can catch footballs, man. So Hunter Renfrow out in Oakland, man, might be like a sneaky. I tweeted out that last year Seth Roberts out in Oakland, man, had 64 targets. So Hunter Renfrow might be like a sneaky rookie, like 50 target, maybe like a 60. Again, they didn't have Antonio Brown last year. They didn't have Tyrell Williams last year. I get it. So, but I mean, dude, Hunter Renfrow, despite being non-athletic, despite looking like your accountant, he's got paws, bro. Do you have any Hunter Renfrow takes for us, man? Are you as excited? That's why I got the orange on, bro. I threw on the Hunter Renfrow Clemson orange tonight for this exact topic. I love Hunter Renfrow, man. I hated him during the draft process. The Raiders took him, man. I was the biggest fan. I am now the biggest fan. I'm the biggest Hunter Renfrow fan on the internet.
I love Hunter Renfrow as well, and I'm glad you brought it up because I would like to talk about Clemson. Look, let me tell you about the 2019 class. Hunter Renfrow ranked number 8 in the Breakout Finder. People are probably like, what? Hunter Renfrow was number 8 in the Breakout Finder? Let me tell you why. Because the Breakout Finder has a metric called the teammate score, which takes into account who someone played with. A lot of times, that is the reason you, fantasy football listener, dislike a player, because you look at his raw counting stats and go, this guy didn't produce enough. Except you're ignoring the fact that this guy's played with Deion Kane, Amari Rodgers, T. Higgins, Justin Ross, all these guys. Every year he's been there, he's had a battle with 5-star recruits, 4-star recruits, just monsters. But Hunter Renfrow comes up big in big games. He does it year over year. And yeah, I'm a fan of Hunter Renfrow. We knew that he was going to be a not necessarily a compiler, but a sure-handed receiver, and especially in the slot for a guy like Derek Carr, this may be a guy that he builds rapport with, and he has a decent year. If Hunter Renfrow ends up with, say, 70 targets, 75 targets, that'd be sneaky. I like what you said there. Yeah. Clearly, Antonio Brown and his frostbitten feet are going to be the guy here, right? He maybe he's deep exfoliating his feet. I don't know. I don't know what they do. I'm not a foot guy necessarily. I don't know about feet. I know that you said the Roto Doc or whomever. I don't even know these names.
I don't know, man. He was tweeting something about, it's not frostbite. Don't everyone calm down. I don't know what he was saying, bro. But I can't read or think about his feet because I saw that picture. You gotta, bro. Show your wife, show your family that picture. Show everyone that picture, bro.
I cannot. Here's the problem. I don't know what's up with his feet. All I know is Antonio Brown is elite, and I believe that Antonio Brown has a few elite years left in him. We've discussed this on other podcasts before. There's a lot of belief that Antonio Brown theoretically will be the type of player that can produce long into his 30s. We believe that Antonio Brown could be that Jerry Rice type at 35, 36. We're still getting high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 numbers. But I believe even in this offense with Derek Carr, we're going to see a good year out of Antonio Brown. It's a really interesting situation with Darren Waller getting a lot of hype. I read a tweet today that said Darren Waller can't be covered in one-on-ones. Darren Waller's been in the league for 4 years.
Bro, this is the year, though. This is Waller's year.
He's been getting covered in one-on-ones pretty hard for 3 years, apparently, because I haven't heard his name one time. Came in the league as a wide receiver out of Georgia Tech, converted to a tight end. Obviously, the guy's enormous. And this might be his spot here with Derek Carr and Oakland. I mean, you're the resident Oakland fan. When I look at Derek Carr's, efficiency metrics, I mean, what's your take on Derek Carr? Do you believe that Derek Carr is going to support Antonio Brown the way that Ben Roethlisberger did, or do you think that we're going to see issues between Antonio Brown and Derek Carr when some of these balls aren't on target?
Yeah, I think the the narrative surrounding Derek Carr, and again, a polarizing player in his own right, especially after that, that 2016 season, he was getting those MVP nods. A lot of people said those were, kind of, those all had kind of little asterisks on him as well. Either way, a player that, my whole take with Derek Carr in general, just in a nutshell, has been, he's probably not that top 10 player. I'm not sure that he's, that bottom 25 player either from last year for the most part, but he's somewhere in between, someone that I'm confident enough that can win you some games. You can probably, make that deep playoff run, and maybe even, if all the other kind of pieces fall into place as far as defense, as far as offensive line, if all that stuff's clicking, he could definitely, kind of help you push through maybe a potential Super Bowl run. Now, this team is obviously not there for many other reasons, but as far as Carr supporting kind of elite production, two wide receivers, and a productive tight end, I do think he has the arm for it. I think the narrative about his, I think there's obviously the numbers support the fact that he does not go deep. However, when he does go deep, he is an accurate deep ball thrower. So that, obviously behooves, Antonio Brown. That is a bonus to Tyrell Williams. These guys win deep. J.J. Nelson's a 4-3 guy that they just brought over from Arizona as well. So they have a lot of speed this year. And to your point, Darren Waller, Antonio Brown probably drawing two men outside. Tyrell Williams is definitely going to be covered on the outside too. Darren Waller is going to be open in the middle for the most part. So Carr's gonna have his choices. I do expect a lot of the volume to go through the air. Of course, they completely revamped that pass catching group. But again, the big point with Carr has always been his ability to go deep. He wasn't looking there often with someone like Amari Cooper there. So I expect that to change with, Antonio Brown, with Tyrell Williams. But it's going to leave a lot open to, kind of on the middle part of the field. A lot of those intermediate type routes with Darren Waller, with Hunter Renfrow out of the slot, with Josh Jacobs out of the backfield in space. So, again, going back to all the narratives surrounding the Raiders, surrounding Derek Carr, he has that proverbial chip on his shoulder, right? All offseason you heard about how the Raiders are drafting a quarterback, how Gruden doesn't like him, how this team is going to move on from him. He's obviously cemented this year. I imagine this is kind of the one big prove a year, given the fact that this team is, changing cities next year, and Derek Carr can kind of be on that bus or maybe be off that bus. So this year, the offensive line is there. All the weapons are there, so there really are no excuses. The question, I don't necessarily have an answer to your question. I like to think he can support, multiple, high-level pass catchers. Those pass catchers certainly have the talent. It's just about Carr kind of elevating and staying, at that kind of consistent level.
Man, well, I was looking at the next topic I want to roll to here. We'll come back to the one that I'm about to skip because I'm just interested in this one for a second. Talk to me about Mike Gesicki, the SPARQ-freak, and as you've noted here, he's had an uneven camp. You have him ranked number 27. If you go to breakoutfinder.com, go to the redraft rankings. These aren't dynasty rankings, redraft rankings. You got Mike Gesicki at number 27 this year in Miami, a team that doesn't really have any weapons to our knowledge, unless you're expecting that Devontae Parker breakout finally.
It could be the year, bro. It could be the year for Parker.
Always. I still got that flag planted. Tell me about Gesicki for a minute.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Gesicki, if you've been following, the Miami Herald, any of the kind of the beat reporters out there, the Dolphins account tweeted out a ridiculous grab he had. He's always been that kind of that high point player, former basketball player, former volleyball player, I believe it was, out of school. We know that Penn State, weight program constantly produces just ridiculous, stupid, high-level athletes. So again, Gesicki was a player that you and I touched on last week, I think it was. He's another player that tends to come up in almost every show. A player that, super high-level athlete, 97th percentile SPARQ score, 6'6", 247, comps to Vernon Davis. On paper, checks all the boxes. On the playing field, however, I think a lot of the reports that I've read, man, is he's up and down as far as his ability downfield, pass catching and stuff like that. I think, one of the big knocks for him coming out of school was his ability in line as a pass blocker as well. Certainly looks like he has the frame for it, but just hasn't quite figured it out, put it together. Might have added a few pounds this offseason to kind of help bolster his game in that regard. What I've read recently, that hasn't been the case necessarily. So he's falling behind Again, obviously in line, but his ability and what you bring him in for, kind of down the field at these contested catch situations. He was selected 10th overall in the second round, so a high draft pick. Miami's not the best offense, as you alluded to, but a player that on paper should be doing so much more. We know the tight end has a tough transition. But man, just a player that I expected a lot more of at this point in his career, especially on this offense, where again it's not a good offense, but there are targets up, for grabs. So it's been up and down. It's hard to really plant your flag confidently given these latest reports. It's just gonna, it's a player that I'm gonna be watching closely during the preseason games to see if he kind of strings together 2-3 really good consistent performances, because that's really all it comes back to with this guy. We know he's athletic, just needs the consistency.
When you go back to Mike Gesicki's junior season at Penn State, that really, for me, when I look at sort of requisite production out of a collegiate athlete at the tight end position, he checked that box for me. We see 679 receiving yards, 48 catches, 14.1 yards per reception. That's right in those markers for some of the top tight ends that entered this league. And then, of course, you look at the fact that the guy is a 97th percentile SPARQ athlete. So we combine those two things. Now factor in that the Miami Dolphins are going to load Ryan Fitzpatrick up this year for part of the year. Assume that Josh Rosen may take over this year. Maybe not. I don't know. But initially, we're going to have Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick can air the ball out. If the expectation is that Devontae Parker doesn't necessarily get any better than he has been, and Albert Wilson is considered the sleeper wide receiver in this offense, and Kenny Stills is kind of the tried and true weapon, there isn't really anybody else outside of those people. If the expectation is that Kalen Ballage, who's currently running number one ahead of Kenyon Drake, which has a lot of people #fired up about that, I like Kalen Ballage better than I like Kenyon Drake, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'm a fan. You got a guy with that kind of speed and size and receiving ability. He caught 44 balls at Arizona State, even though Manny Wilkins is a piece of crap and screwed everything up for him. You got to be a fan of Kalen Ballage, but let's move on for a minute here. I like Mike Gesicki's chances this year. We need to see a step forward from this guy, but here's the problem. People are being too hard on him as a tight end. We already know that it's one of the more difficult positions to transition to from college football. It's a rarity to get a George Kittle. Vernon Davis didn't, immediately turn into a superstar, and I don't know that he ever hit the ceiling people expected out of him. Mike Gesicki, though, in this offense, changing quarterbacks yet again, maybe changing quarterbacks yet again in the middle of the year is going to mess with the continuity. But at his current price tag, looking at even where you have him at 27, I think he's a buy. He's a guy that in Dynasty I'm stashing because the athleticism is incredible upside, and he's the number one tight end, spent a lot of draft capital on him in Miami, and there's just nobody else there. And perhaps this is the year on volume alone that we witness a breakout. But I'm not quitting on Mike Gesicki, a young tight end going into his second year on a dysfunctional team.
I like it, man. No, I think that's probably it's more of a mature, level-headed approach than a lot of these. It's been really hot and cold out there for our guy Mike Gesicki. Man, we got a couple other tight end notes here. I made mention of Rico Gathers being cut by the Cowboys. Not a player that we can have to spend a ton of time on. He might have had, again, more or less of the same kind of storyline so far. Had a couple highlight catches. Just an enormous 6'6", 273 former Baylor basketball player, I believe, but a guy that was always kind of that preseason, offseason hero, and it never materialized for him in Dallas. So now he's free. I think I immediately saw some the Patriots are gonna sign him and obviously turn his whole career around. So I don't know if you have any sort of Rico Gathers takes, man. We can quickly ski on past this one though too, if not.
Well, I'm sure the coaches were hoping that Rico gathers his shit and gets the fuck out of the locker room.
This is why you get paid the big bucks, bro.
Yeah, that's what I do. I string these together. Look, he's the Kristen Michael of tight ends. I mean, when everybody was talking for years that this guy was the guy, that this guy was going to surpass whoever. Look, they brought back Jason Witten. They're like, nah, Jason Witten's got it. We're good. Thank you.
It's bad, bro. That's how you know it's bad.
How bad are you when 42-year-old dad jeans Jason Witten straight out the announcer's box?
Kicked out the booth. They didn't want him there.
And took your job. He came and took your job from you. I mean, what does that say about him? I don't care if he lands with the Patriots. We've seen it before. We've seen tight ends land with the Patriots with high hopes that this was going to be the next guy that breaks out. Just because the system, successfully used players that they drafted doesn't mean that they're going to successfully use players that they acquired as free agents. It's a different story. And I don't have a lot to say about Rico Gathers. I was never necessarily high on him. Everybody loved the whole basketball background thing. That was the big love for everybody. But
ever since Antonio Gates and Jimmy Graham, man, that was kind of you had to have that box checked, right?
That's what I'm saying. But no, man. Look, the real news here is go buy Jason Witten. He's gonna hit.
We're gonna just edit that part
White Claw.
out. And the last tight end note that we have here, bro, and then we got a couple other blurbs that we want to finish up with here. Man, a guy that you brought up. You've been talking a lot, either directly or inadvertently, whatever the case may be. You've been talking a lot about the Detroit offense in general. So here is a player that again another high early draft pick. We are talking about, of course, T.J. Hockenson. The latest out of Detroit camp is that he is a fixture, quote unquote, a fixture in their offense, which again, initially, we fantasy football gamers read that and we think, you would expect that your first round, high draft, capital investment player is a fixture. But again, we just talked about it before. There is that learning curve for tight ends entering the league. Hockenson was a player that was compared, alma mater aside, play style, ability, kind of transition to the next level to Iowa's own George Kittle as well. So are there any, number one, are there any kind of season long, thoughts as far as TJ Hockenson goes, and anything changed for you as far as dynasty kind of long-term view for you as far as TJ Hockenson stock goes?
The thing for TJ Hockenson is the fact that he's such a good blocker, right? TJ Hockenson is a notoriously good blocker, and that was great for Kerryon Johnson. And that's great for the offense that Darrell Bevell is going to want to run. They're going to want to establish the run in Detroit. Matt Patricia's come out and said that that's their plan as well. But I think that this is a good thing for TJ Hockenson. He's such a good blocker that it may put him in more positions where he can fake blocks, or he can set things up and find himself down the field open in opportunities where he's going to be a difficult cover for a linebacker or a safety. Again, a 75th percentile SPARQ athlete and a guy who all the way back to college proved it. I mean, last year at Iowa, 49 receptions, 760 receiving yards, 15.5 yards per reception. So he's very dynamic in an offense that we talked about that is ascending. Marvin Jones, to me, is a best ball boomer bust player. A lot of people like him. Everybody's predicting the breakout. Let's just be happy with the fact that Marvin Jones is going to get you 56 catches, 921 yards, 7 touchdowns, and let's just put him in a box,
that's it,
lock it up, and never talk about him again.
That's it.
Kenny Golladay is the guy. TJ Hockenson is somebody that we should all be big fans of entering this year. And TJ Hockenson's success could also be hinged on Kerryon Johnson's success, because the more of a threat that Kerryon Johnson is out of the backfield, again, with his inline blocking abilities and ability to be a move tight end, I think that opens up things for him. And I was reading a report today that Matthew Stafford against the Patriots defense was carving him up in an up-tempo offense. So maybe that's the plan for Detroit a little bit more. Move the ball a little quicker. TJ Hockenson at the end of this 4 completed passes in a row drive was the recipient of a touchdown. So he adds a weapon in the red zone. He adds a good blocker for a dynamic running back. Finally, Matthew Stafford, a guy that people have been taking dumps on as much as Lamar Miller for the past couple years, has Kenny Golladay coming off a big year, has Kerryon Johnson, who he doesn't have to worry about throwing the ball to Theo Riddick anymore. Again, we talked about 138 pass targets to the running backs last year. Theo Riddick is gone. TJ Hockenson gets added as a dynamic pass-catching weapon. Marvin Jones is still there. So I'm a fan of TJ Hockenson in Detroit, and clearly with them taking him at the 8th pick overall in the first round, Detroit is as well.
Yeah, buddy. So I mean, again, this is like you said, from both a season long and a dynasty standpoint, a player that should obviously be on all of our radars. I'm sure he is, just given the draft capital alone. Now, skipping around here a little bit, want to keep the theme of backfields and kind of backfields driving offenses, a backfield that you and I talk about a little bit, just given your affiliation, given your fandom. The latest news, which I think you might have commented on before we hopped on the show, was, Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. Chris Carson was a player that, Evan Silva, the GOAT himself, has been kind of talking up, had him kind of notably above Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny was a player that I was kind of buying early and often, just as that, that second year kind of breakout. But the story remains, man, that Chris Carson is just a hashtag good football player, and a player that the Seattle offense, Shoddy, all them, they want to continue to lean on as long as he's healthy, man. I imagine he's going to keep getting the bulk of the run. Now, the latest headline that kind of came out today was, Shoddy opening up and saying, listen, we need to get Carson involved more so in the passing game. So again, all those, you can kind of see the divide starting between Rashad Penny, kind of strong flex play, to, Chris Carson looking like a really strong kind of RB2 play. So do you have, again, I think you might have commented on before the show and kind of how this kind of boosts Russell Wilson stock and all that stuff. So again, we talk about Seattle backfield enough, so don't feel like you have to spend a ton of time here, but given this recent kind of love and Shoddy kind of pumping up Carson, any other kind of news and notes and any kind of bullet points you want to draw from this one?
No, I mean, you touched on it there. First off, I think that Seattle passing the ball to the running backs more frequently than they have, increasing that frequency is huge for Russell Wilson, and it's huge for these running backs because we saw the play action with Marshawn Lynch, who was a capable pass catcher, but not necessarily a dynamic pass catcher. They talk about Chris Carson's hands and his ability as a receiver. And then, of course, Rashad Penny back at San Diego State didn't catch a ton of passes. 19 was his top year, but we see 15 and 14 yards per reception. So making some big plays with the ball in his hand. I sent a tweet out the other day. Somebody had tweeted that Chris Carson was ahead of Rashad Penny in camp again. And I quote tweeted it and said, I had to check what year this was and make sure this was a tweet from 2019 because I'm having flashbacks. I mean, here's the sad part. 7th round pick, Chris Carson, playing ahead of 1st round pick, Rashad Penny. Now, in hindsight, it looks terrible for Seattle, but this is a team that has struggled with depth at the running back position for so many years. How good do they feel now that they know Rashad Penny's capable? But look, Chris Carson has earned the job. This guy essentially came from nothing to be the starting back on a team that runs the ball as much, if not more, than any other team in the NFL. I'm not against it. I think Chris Carson's incredibly capable. I'm a fan of either running back if they get the starting job, but Chris Carson's earned it, and he's played well while in that role. With that being said, though, if this is truly the plan for Seattle to pass the ball more to the running backs, again, Seattle paid Russell Wilson this year big-time money. I think the belief was that he was already going to air it out a little more than in the past. DK Metcalf also being a bit of a sign to that as well. But if they're going to throw the ball to Chris Carson and Rashad Penny out of the backfield a little more than before, than that 426 attempts that Russell Wilson had last year could be pushing back up to 500. And Russell Wilson at 500 pass attempts is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and you can bank it.
That's it, bro. Put the money out of your pocket, buy some White Claws, and then bank it on Russie.
All the chips.
All the chips. Man, listen, so going to keep bouncing around here as we kind of close things out. More running back notes, man. First one, again, don't have to spend a ton of time on it since it is super new, and there's a lot of question marks, man. Jerick McKinnon, off the pup. Matt Kelly favorite, player profiler favorite. Jerick McKinnon, man, he's back. He awakens, and he realizes that there's now Tevin Coleman. He realizes that there's now Matt Breida. and he realizes that Kid Shanahan's still calling the plays, and he loves his running backs. So what if anything, do we make of Jerick McKinnon and the path that he has to kind of carve out? He obviously secured the bag at one point in time, then unfortunately had the injury. The road back doesn't look like it was. It's not open for him. Tevin Coleman, more or less in that de facto RB1 seat. So any Jerick McKinnon thoughts, questions, concerns, comments? A sip of White Claw.
Let me sip White Claw before I take a dump on Jerick McKinnon.
Oh boy, dude, I didn't realize I was just teeing this one up for you.
No, you did. Thank you. Here's my take on Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon literally couldn't run away with the job back when Adrian Peterson went down for the entirety or a majority of the season. He goes and gets this opportunity in San Francisco after underwhelming in some opportunities in Minnesota the previous couple of years. Low yards per carry. I get that people are gonna knock this offense. Even back to 2016 for Jerick McKinnon, looking at his efficiency numbers on playerprofiler.com, a fantastic website you should check out. Number 70 in breakaway run rate overall amongst the NFL. Number 23 in juke rate. Number 31 in receiving yards. It's just some of the things that would stand out to you don't stand out. And this is a crowded backfield. Even if Jerick McKinnon is decent, if they plan on playing Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida and Jerick McKinnon, I mean, how much opportunity can you really expect for Jerick McKinnon? I realize he got paid when he went there, but to me, coming off the ACL, Matt Breida playing as well as he has been, Tevin Coleman coming in, put back together with that old head coach.
Familiarity for sure.
Kind of feels like to me, right now, Jerick McKinnon's the odd man out. Now, with that said, that makes him a value. That makes him a guy that you may want to pick up in the event of an injury, or in the event that we're wrong, that Jerick McKinnon is a good football player. But I got 4 years of football plus an ACL tear that tells me that I'm not putting my chips in on Jerick McKinnon because I got them all in on Russell Wilson. I got no chips left.
I need you to take this as you finish the claw, man. As you finish the claw, I need you to take that, those last few minutes, cut that out, and play that shit right at the top of the next Sonic Truth podcast, man. And really just kind of dangle that shit right out in front of our boy Matty Kelly, man. Last running back that I wanted to touch on here, man. A player that I know I'm a pretty big fan of, despite kind of the uphill battle he may or may not have. Not sure where you stand on it, so I'm very excited to kind of get your take, man. But Jaylen Samuels, again, we know the story about Samuels, man. Back in North Carolina State, played that hybrid, tight end, running back. He might have even been split out wide a little bit. And he was all over the field for him. So we know by default he has some hands. 75 receptions his senior season in that tight end, that hybrid role. Now a professional NFL running back playing behind James Conner. The headlines for him, he's been solid this offseason, and he has quote unquote, the Steelers have quote unquote he's going to have a significant part of the Steelers offense, which again to me means something, knowing that he's playing ahead of a really good player in James Conner. We know the Steelers are kind of going through some sort of kind of transformation. Luckily they have Juju that kind of slides into that Antonio Brown role. Ben Roethlisberger obviously getting older, but just signed another kind of extension or something like that. So they have the pieces. They have the running back. They have the wide receiver. The quarterback still there. Jaylen Samuels to me feels like he's just knocking on the door. And obviously, we don't want anything to happen to James Conner, but one of those, we talk about it, one of those elite handcuffs, but also kind of, to me, offers some standalone kind of satellite back type value, just given that obvious receiving ability. So, a player that, again, I was particularly high on coming out, playing behind a kind of solidified RB1, of course. So the path isn't exactly as open as we would like it to be, as he would like it to be. But man, give me your Jalen Samuel, these Jalen Samuels takes, man. Are you a fan on paper? Do you like his situation now? What's the season long outlook? What's the dynasty outlook, and all that good stuff?
Let's go back to an interesting fact for people that aren't very well aware of what Jalen Samuels was back in college at NC State, as you had mentioned, kind of an H-back hybrid role. This is a guy that when you look at his last year at NC State, not necessarily by the production, but by the opportunity, looked almost 1-for-1 with Curtis Samuel. So when you think about how Curtis Samuel was used in that pass-catching, rushing role, very similar with Jalen Samuels, which is a really interesting thing. As far as this offense, man, Jalen Samuels has been trending up all offseason. All we hear is that the Pittsburgh Steelers plan on using him heavier than before. And maybe that's because last year they had Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a god, and they had Antonio Brown, who was also a god in this offense. And now they've replaced Antonio Brown with Dante Moncrief or James Washington or Deontay Johnson, whatever mix of these guys you want to make, but that's missing on the other side. So maybe the plan now was to be a little more dynamic out of the backfield, to use a guy like Jalen Samuels a little more in the passing game. We've seen the frequency at which James Conner has been used. That's what makes Jalen Samuels such a valuable handcuff. Look, typically, I don't care about handcuffs. I don't want to be the guy that owns backup running backs because predicting injury isn't worth it. But Jalen Samuels has the potential in an offense that just watched an elite wide receiver one step out the door. He has the potential to be a flex play option, even with James Conner healthy in this offense. He could be a guy that we see with 4 to 5 targets a game and maybe 8 to 9 rushes potentially, which could give him a decent floor. And if James Conner was to go down, Jalen Samuels, as we saw, the year prior, is a very capable a playmaker. He's got big size, 6 foot, 225. So he is a feature athlete, with reasonable athleticism, 55th percentile SPARQ score. So Pittsburgh is a notorious pass-heavy offense. Things have changed with some of the receivers. Dante Moncrief has gotten a little bit of hype, but I think like most of us, we're not sure if Dante Moncrief, if he's going to break out. Like, he would have to break out to be a viable weapon in this offense. But if he couldn't do it with Andrew Luck, and obviously it wasn't happening with Blake Bortles, maybe this is the quarterback that gets it done with him. But I like to believe that Juju Smith is going to see more targets than he can handle. He's going to be on a Mike Evans level amount of targets, 175 targets. His hands are going to hurt by the end of the game. James Conner is going to be targeted heavily. Obviously, Vance McDonald is going to be an extremely big weapon in this offense. But I think that there is a big-time role for Jalen Samuels, even without an injury to James Conner.
I like it, man. Yeah, we are in lockstep, which is something I always like to hear. So talked about some of these interesting, running backs, these running back spots right here. We got a few wide receiver nuggets to kind of close things out here, bro. The first of which is, and I'm excited to talk about wideouts here because this is, you can really get the breakout finder, the numbers behind all this and the context and kind of the reasons why you and I, and obviously the breakout finder likes these players. So I'm going to start about with one of the darlings here, man, AJ Brown. Oh, yeah. But not for the reasons, that one would think, especially the way that you and I kind of talked him over the offseason. We talked about these initial depth charts rolling out, and everyone knows, real life football fan, fantasy football fan, you take these initial depth charts with a grain of salt, unless of course that initial depth chart is the Raiders depth chart and Hunter Renfrow shining. You take that with all the salt, man, because that is incredible. But the Titans depth chart came out, man. Our guy, our hero, AJ Brown, third stringer, bro, behind the likes of Taywan Taylor, behind the likes of Tajay Sharp. Are you? Is this a grain of salt scenario? Are you at all concerned about what you've been seeing, reading, listening, whatever the case may be, out of this Titans camp, or is this kind of an indictment of kind of is he in a rut immediately? Is he falling behind? Are we panicking, bro? Am I going to go 3 buttons talking about Antonio Brown here? Or excuse me, AJ Brown?
Wow, it is opening. Oh my God.
Sweating.
We gotta get Matt Harmon on the phone and figure out if this is too much for this setting.
I don't know. Someone call Matt Harmon.
Get him on here. Look, here's the deal with A.J. Brown. The Breakout Finder said A.J. Brown was the number 1 receiver in this class. A.J. Brown did not have the highest teammate score in this class because A.J. Brown was a uber productive wide receiver from an early age all the way back at Ole Miss. This is a guy that we felt like had one of the highest floors coming into the NFL this year. And obviously, the Tennessee Titans believe the same thing because they took him with the 19th pick in the second round. And that's important. That's high draft capital. A lot of people are thinking that if you don't go in the first round, it's not high draft capital. Tons of hits come out of the second round. Tons of hits. And that says more to me about Corey Davis than it did about A.J. Brown. Now, this is kind of the same thing that I heard with N'Keal Harry running with the second team. I feel like this is just a bit of the fire that he's going to have to walk through to make his way to the top of this roster. It's the same thing. Look, Taywan Taylor was a third-round pick, and Tajay Sharp was playing ahead of him almost the whole year last year. We're like, when the hell is Taywan Taylor going to jump ahead of Tajay Sharp? But then they go and add Adam Humphries, slot wide receiver. And this team has a lot of depth at wide receivers, surprisingly, because I think we all agree that Taywan Taylor is talented and Corey Davis is obviously uber talented. Adam Humphries is talented. Tajay Sharp has played well when given opportunity. And then you've got A.J. Brown. I'm not concerned. If you're doing your rookie drafts now, which I doubt you are, he just became an absurd value because guys are sliding all over the board. I'm still a fan of A.J. Brown. If you've got anybody that's got fear of him or wants to sell him, go buy him. The problem here is that we're talking about the Tennessee Titans offense. We're talking about an offense that doesn't throw the ball that much. Mariota hasn't been the player that a lot of people expected him to be. This coaching staff hasn't gotten the most out of him. And there's an expectation that Derrick Henry is going to be the massive feature part of this offense. So I believe that if A.J. Brown can secure the second job, which he will on the outside, I believe that he's probably going to be in that realm of 75 to 90 targets year one with expectations of him going further in year two. But again, remember, this is a low volume passing offense with an expectation that Derrick Henry is going to run the rock a lot, that already has an expected number 1 in Corey Davis and Adam Humphries to clean up underneath.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things, man. You see these depth charts come, start to reveal themselves, and then there's always a player or two that initially might seem out of place, but as you said, not the right time to push any sort of panic button or ring any sort of alarm here, man. Just stay the course, trust the breakout finder, and things are going to be okay here in the end, man. So two more players before we kind of close the curtain on this week's episode here, man. I was very excited to see you kind of write this name down, mainly because his alma mater, man, Northern Arizona. You have this thing about smaller schools, so I was excited for you to kind of throw his name out there, man. But we are talking about Emmanuel Butler, New Orleans Saints, undrafted, 6'3", 217. You pull up his profile at playerprofiler.com, man. You'll see a Ruben Randall comparison, which might be intriguing to some. Oh. You see a 90th percentile breakout age, again, intriguing to some. You also see an 86th percentile college dominator rating. Again, these are intriguing numbers. He finds himself in a Drew Brees quarterbacked offense. I imagine you jotted his name down here because you have seen his name pop up in Saints camp here. The question that you posed to me, to the good people out here, man, which I'm gonna let you kind of answer and give your spin on here, bro, is Emmanuel Butler's good camp, a surprising camp, however you want to word it. Does this spell trouble for a player that, again, I was high on, I believe a player you're high on? Does Butler's camp spell trouble for Tre'Quan Smith?
Oh boy. Here we go.
Tricky one, bro.
Here we go with this one. Look, boy, Tre'Quan Smith is currently slotted just slightly ahead of Emmanuel Butler, and everybody knows I'm not a small school guy. I am not a fan of small school projects. Ashton Doolin, get him out of here. I don't want to talk about these guys.
I don't hear about these schools, but I don't know where they are in the country.
I don't know where they are. Somebody give me a globe and point it out to me. I can't read or write. I can read this, though. Emmanuel Butler has a 86th percentile college dominator. Now, hold on a second. Let's hold on just a minute. I've been fighting this fight for a long time with my pitchfork, baling hay. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. White Claw got me. Listen, the point that I'm trying to make is an 86 percentile dominator rating at Northern Arizona and an 86 percentile college dominator rating at Alabama aren't the same thing, but it's the same scale. So when people come to me with the college dominator rating of small school guys, I go, crumple it up and go, get it out of here. Don't talk to me about it until you get a scale that slides. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. I am a fan of Emmanuel Butler in this offense. The question is, how long does Drew Brees play for, and what's the expectation, at least in 2019? In 2019, there are quite a few names ahead of him. Michael Thomas just got paid big dollars. Michael Thomas is a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in this league, no doubt about it. Austin Carr has been slated in that slot wide receiver role, a very capable receiver. He's been in this team a couple years, and the expectation is that he's going to hold that role. Ted Ginn has had a lengthy career, If you went into the NFL and had Ted Ginn's career, you are a success. You may not be a fantasy football monster, but you are an NFL success. And then behind Ted Ginn is Tre'Quan Smith, and right behind him is Emmanuel Butler. So here's my take on that. With Emmanuel Butler, he's been showing out at camp. You go to Roto World, look at the blurbs, talk about he's been turning heads all camp ever since coming from the Lumberjacks. Not really a football-related name, but we're going to ignore it anyways because he's got a great dominator rating or whatever. Here's the thing, though. He was a go-to receiver at Northern Arizona. That is important. The dominator rating doesn't mean as much to me as just the pure fact that he was the go-to option. And game over game, everybody knew, hey, we need a game plan for this receiver. And yet, they could not stop him. So between him and Tre'Quan Smith, I need to see more from Tre'Quan this year because his opportunity was limited last year. He had a couple games last year that were big games that everybody tends to cite when we go back to 2018. I think one game he had 10 catches for 157, and one game he had 3 catches for 111, and the rest of the games were 2 for 15, 1 for 11, 3 for 30, 2 for 23, 3 for 18, 1 for 18. He was non-existent. He wasn't there. So what do? They bring in a talented, athletic player, semi-athletic player in Emmanuel Butler, 53rd percentile receiver, a guy who played well at a small school to challenge, to come in here. And these undrafted free agents are hungry, and it's not a surprise that Emmanuel Butler is playing well, especially with a quarterback like Drew Brees. But also we've seen Drew Brees scale back the pass attempts in the past couple years. We've seen Alvin Kamara get a rise in those. Michael Thomas see a rise. 2019, not quite sure what Emmanuel Butler's real role is, but he is a player I would like to hold on to long term, assuming that Drew Brees does what the rest of these guys do and sign an extension like Roethlisberger, like Brady.
Right. He's he is tethered to the right thrower of the football, but again, the question is kind of how long does that throwing kind of play out here? But again, a very intriguing prospect. Again, another player that I wish we had Matt Kelly on for, because again, I know you guys are going to go toe to toe about the small school profiles, man. That is always fun for me as a listener. The last bridge we're gonna cross here, bro. These shows always go by way too fast. Thank you everyone for tuning in here. The last one here, bro. An article that has been fun to kind of watch, kind of grow and garner the feedback and stuff like this. I know an article that you had a lot of fun writing and kind of putting together. It was kind of in the moment. Jacoby Myers, man, out in New England. Again, we're talking about these players that had very little to no buzz prior, now turning heads, right? Every offseason is a new chapter here for these guys. So here's a guy that has been, if I've been reading these headlines correctly, one of Brady's favorite target. Yes. And again, you threw together a beautifully written piece, man, that kind of turned over every relevant stone over at breakoutfinder.com, man. You talked about his player profile, talked about what he did as far as breakout finder scores. So man, give us for those that haven't seen it yet, they need to go to the website and check it out. But for those that haven't seen it yet, tell us number one, who the hell Jakobi Meyers is.
Oh,
number two, what we are to do with Jakobi Meyers for season long purposes, and of course, what are we supposed to do with Jakobi Meyers for dynasty purposes.
Look, I am all out of White Claw, which makes this a depressing point in time because this is going to be my most hyped moment of the show. But let's talk about Jakobi Meyers for a second. Look, we just got done talking about Emmanuel Butler. We just got done talking about Ashton Dulin. Look, Jakobi Meyers, 93rd percentile college dominator rating in the ACC. So you can take those small schools and cram them right up the keister because that is a real dominator rating. That is a legit dominator rating. You go to his junior season in 2018, just this last year, 92 receptions, over 1,000 receiving yards while playing with Kelvin Harmon, 6th-round pick to the Washington Redskins. And also, he played with Jalen Samuels, another name that comes up in this article. The title of the article that I wrote is Jakobi Meyers is Surging. What does it mean for N'Keal Harry's fantasy stock? And people ate it up. Why? Because you are legit worried about N'Keal Harry. He was running with the second team. Jakobi Meyers has some of the most targets with Tom Brady. They're in lockstep. Things are going well. And then people bring up that Jakobi Meyers is not a good athlete. He's a 43rd percentile SPARQ athlete. The problem is he's a 93rd percentile college dominator, which means that even with his subpar athleticism, he was productive in college. And this is with a 45.8 teammate score, number 22 in the class. So that means that even though he wasn't a great athlete, and he had another NFL drafted talent in Kelvin Harmon and in Jalen Samuels, he still produced on an extremely high level. These are great metrics to look at. He was number 31 in level of competition score. So not the highest score, but again, a solid competition score. Then we look at the depth chart in New England. Philip Dorsett. Not sure what Philip Dorsett is. Philip Dorsett feels like an extra, but he's played better than people expected in the past. If you bought him in the offseason a couple years ago, congrats, because you got maybe a best ball option. I don't know what he is. Demaryius Thomas, don't talk to me about him. Maurice Harris is this year's Kembrell Tompkins. People are trying to tell me that Jakobi Meyers was. That's impossible. Jakobi Meyers is way better than he ever was. And then we've got Julian Edelman, who is a clear staple in this offense. So I believe that there is potential that Jakobi Meyers gets some opportunity this year, but he is a player that I want to hold in the long run because Bill Belichick loves grinders. He loves guys with a chip on their shoulder. Here comes an undrafted free agent playing his ass off in an offense, getting the respect of Tom Brady, playing with the ones, targeted more than N'Keal Harry, showing out at practice. You've got tons and tons of accounts from beat writers coming out saying that, here's one from Michael Girardi. He says, undrafted free agent wide receiver Jakobi Meyers has consistently made plays in competitive situations, has outperformed N'Keal Harry, although, again, we're just a week in. Hey, that's where it starts, and it builds from here. I'm a fan of guys who work hard, who get opportunities. I'm a fan of Jakobi Meyers, and I guarantee you, as you're listening to this right now, you go to your free agent waiver wire, he is sitting there. Right now, he's sitting there. You got somebody on that roster you can cut. I guarantee you can cut Ashton Dulin. Cut him, add Jakobi Meyers. Let's go.
You can definitely cut Ashton Dulin, man. Listen, this is the coolest part to me about the Breakout Finder project is that here we are, early August, man. Obviously, training camp headlines are buzzing. That's what these past couple shows have been about. That's what these next couple shows will continue to be about. It is that time of year, man, where again we talked about the very first kind of preseason show we did, off-season show we did. You know, teams are, you know, you're drafting your teams off these flyers, off these camp nuggets and stuff like that. So here we are in August, man, with a player in Jakobi Meyers who was undrafted. But then you come to the Breakout Finder, you find and you learn and you read about all this context behind these players that Nate and these other guys are writing about, man. On paper, high level, you see an undrafted player with subpar athleticism, you're going to overlook them. But as Nate pointed out here, with the assistance of course playerprofiler.com and of course the Breakout Finder metrics here, man, there is a lot to like about these kind of profiles, and there's reasons to be optimistic, man. So again, just a very one example. We've brought you a couple this episode, but this example in particular is why I kind of wanted to close things out here, man, because this is the perfect example of what we're all about over here, man. So just a really cool look. So again, bro, I've said all I had to say this episode. I drank only one White Claw. I wish it was 2, maybe 3. We'll have to get those on ice for next time, bro. But yes. Please, let's get the hell out of here, Mero. Tell the people about the website. Anything else that you have to get off your chest here?
Let's do it. So hey, look, if you guys like the podcast, do us a favor, rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. We're trying to spread the word on this thing. The more people we can get on this podcast, it helps us work out things in the future. We want to keep this website free as well. So this is a big step towards doing that, keeping these things free for people for this opportunity. Go to the website, check out Ryan's ranks that exist right now. And he's going to have articles coming out here next week on wide receivers. He's going to have one coming out after that on tight ends. We got more articles planned, the dynamic score. I've got one in the works about another undrafted free agent who's ranked inside the top 10 in the Breakout Finder, but you won't find out till next week. I'm dropping no names.
Bro.
Dropping no names. Well, maybe I'll drop a name. Nah, I'm not gonna drop a name.
Next week.
Yeah, do some reviewing. Check us out on Instagram, Breakout_Finder. Find us on Twitter, Breakout_Finder. And unlike some of the other accounts, Ryan and I, we're very accessible. You tweeted us. If you come correct or it's funny, we're going to respond to you. We're very active. You come to the Breakout Finder account, it's not just one of these dummy accounts that just posts articles. Look, man, if you got a take and you want to talk to the Breakout Finder, it's got a response. I will tell you for a fact.
I am throwing one of a dozen fantastic gifts your way. If again, like Nate said, if it's something that's logical for sure. So
that's right.
we're definitely very accessible, man. And we welcome the interactions, good, positive, bad, negative, anything in between.
Yep. So bring your fire, folks. Thanks again for listening. Ryan, thanks again for coming on. This is a loose episode, but
just like the buttons, bro. Just like the buttons.
Those things are just coming off automatically at this point.
Someone call Matt Harmon up, bro. I need to get his take on this, bro.
This is too much. I'm gonna wear a button down next time also. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you guys next week.